welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for coming here. I'm Lula LV and joined today by my very first guest on this channel, Sainte James. Thank you so much for coming here today. And we're gonna talk all about your career, your journey to becoming a stylist and your years of experience in the entertainment and luxury industries, and we'll talk a little bit about your time at Louis Vuitton. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and don't forget to mention where everyone can find you online as well. Sainte James is on Instagram and YouTube, so definitely go ahead and follow him.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be your first guest. So I really appreciate that and look forward to the conversation. And yeah, my name is Sainte James. I'm a luxury connoisseur, stylist, image consultant, and have a background in sports, entertainment, luxury, lifestyle, and fashion. So it's kind of the world that I live in day to day, what I'm really happy about. And so I look forward to a great conversation talking about LV, one of my passions, Louis Vuitton, my time there, the NFL, sports, and now in luxury Swiss watches.
That's awesome. So what was your first interest? What sparked this whole interest, and what set you down this career path?
So I always start with my parents because as I get older, I look back and like I didn't realize at the time. I think all of us look back and like you don't realize what you actually were picking up and exposed to as a kid. So my mom and my dad to this day are a huge influence in my life. My mom was very big into academics and culture and art. I was a saxophone player. Also, I played basketball at a pretty high level. So I was kind of a Renaissance kid even at a young age. My dad was kind of my influence from a fashion perspective, music, writing as well. I'm also a published writer. So between the two of them, I was really kind of exposed as a young age. And then as I got older, I started to realize like this was something that I was really passionate about. Style, fashion, and just getting myself ingratiated in the world of culture is how I put it. I always joke my dad was wearing Birkenstocks before they were cool.
They're back. They're back in.
They are back in. They are back in. He was doing this way back in the 70s. So yeah, so he was driving a Citroen station wagon, a French station wagon, back when I was a kid, which at the time I thought was weird, but now it's like he was really like exposing me to things that now I can pull on at any given point. At this age and help clients and help other people that I'm working with. So it would start with my parents.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I feel like especially as we get older and become parents and have kids, and then, it really changes our whole perspective. And we look back at all these things that made a huge difference in our lives. And at the time, like we really had no idea. So it's so interesting. I think growing up in a household, like you said, with your parents exposing you, to so much art and culture, I think really has such a huge influence on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Where did
I thank them for that? So I'm always thankful, and I always tell them that as well.
Yeah. So where did you go from there? Did you, did you study this in school? Do you have an actual academic background, or, is it like on the job experience?
I would say a combination. So I went to a private school in Princeton, New Jersey. Big shout out to the Hun School of Princeton.
Awesome.
That was a big step for me at the time because I was around every culture, every demographic. My brother was an actor as a kid, so I was always in New York taking him on auditions. So I was kind of in a really interesting space. We went to church in North Philadelphia, so I was getting the taste of the city, New York City, Philadelphia. And then I went to Drexel University. Studied finance and marketing. So I was a double major. Obviously living in the city was a great exposure as well. And then after that was really kind of the beginning of my journey because I didn't really have a set plan that I wanted to follow. And I ended up working for a gentleman by the name of Troy Vincent, who at the time was a NFL player for the Philadelphia
Mhm.
Eagles. And long story short, I worked with him, became a partner in his firm. He actually took me under his wing, exposed me to a lot of athletes, and I'm a risk taker by nature. So even though I was a
Yeah.
partner at 26 years old, I actually left and became an intern at the time for NFL Films, which,
Okay.
looking back on it, looks like I was a genius, but I was really just taking a shot. And that kind of took me down this path of sports and entertainment. I ended up working in PR for the Eagles. And then that led to an opportunity to work for the league office, NFL Network. So all
Yeah.
of a sudden, I find myself going from a kid watching these games to literally being in the middle of all of this action. So that was the beginning of this journey for me from a
Yeah.
sports entertainment perspective.
So for someone like me who doesn't know a lot about football, when you were with NFL Films, was that just working in the game, the broadcast of the games, or were there other aspects that you were involved in?
So NFL Films is the production arm of the NFL. So if you can think of like HBO or
Okay.
ESPN, they are really the hub of how you get to see things on television. From a game standpoint, but also from a production standpoint, television shows, documentaries, any kind of content that you would find on television. I was heavily involved on the production side, but I was mostly involved on the talent side. So, in other words, I was the one who was getting the actual celebrities or athletes onto the
Okay.
screen. And so that was really kind of a PhD course, if you will, of relationship building, being around high net worth individuals,
Yeah.
celebrities, etc. And that was kind of the beginning of where this journey started to turn into, because even though you're working in football, you're actually working in entertainment, because you're
Hmm.
dealing with not just athletes, you're dealing with celebrities, media people, television executives. And it's amazing because I think a lot of people don't realize all that goes into getting something on the screen in a movie or a documentary.
Yeah.
I was really the hub, one of the hubs of getting those people in those productions.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, and I mean, just the games in the NFL alone, it's such a huge industry. It's what, multi-million dollar industry. And I mean, the players themselves, the coaches, I mean, they're all celebrities these days just in their own right. And just how much money goes into that industry. So I'm definitely seeing the connection, between the entertainment, working with celebrities and athletes. But how did you make that segue then from NFL and entertainment into the luxury fashion world? Because there's definitely some overlap, but from a career perspective, that's a really interesting leap.
Absolutely. So this is where the story gets good, because this is where my personal interest started to seep into my professional life. Because even though I had a job to do from a football and a talent management standpoint, one of my secrets was I was always the guy who I wouldn't talk to an athlete about the obvious things. I was talking to them about, did you see that new movie? Did you see that new
Yeah.
shoe that just came out? Do you like Louis
Uh-huh.
Vuitton? Do you know anyone at Gucci? And so now all of a sudden, my personal life started to merge into my
Mhm.
professional life, and the athletes started to rely on me, not just for, the obvious things. They were relying on me for taste level things, for,
Uh-huh.
where should I go to eat? Where should I go to have dinner? Where should I go this weekend? How do I get tickets to the Knicks game? So I
Uh-huh.
was kind of like the lifestyle guy, even
Okay.
though I was there to do a job, but I was actually doing more than that. And they started to trust me. And that's kind of where I started to morph more into, I call myself a lifestyle connoisseur, where I'm dealing with you more from the fashion standpoint,
Uh-huh.
from the art standpoint, culture standpoint. And now you can see, like, now all those things that I grew up learning and being exposed to started to play themselves into my professional life. And then the trust level became a big part of my success as well, because people relied on me for information and relationships. So the relationship aspect is really, and to this day, still is a huge part of what I do.
Yeah, and especially in the luxury world, relationships are so important because like everything it's very exclusive. That's part of the whole luxury lifestyle is the exclusivity, and it's knowing people, it's knowing how to get into places, and like you can't always just buy your way into things, but you have to
Absolutely.
know, you have to have connections, you have to network. So
Absolutely.
that is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And so what point was this now in your career? Was still pretty early, or
Yeah, this is kind of it's still early, but it's I'm actually starting to, at this point I'm kind of thinking back. I actually got into real estate as well.
Mhm.
I had a gentleman who it was a relationship where he needed some athletes and I had the athletes, and so
Yeah.
he began to trust me, and I got into real estate and started to work my niche, working with a lot of athletes, Michael Vick being one, and so many others. But that's where I started to see where like I'm really more than just the job description, and I started
Mhm.
to walk in that truth, if you will, and really started to forge my way into the world of luxury and fashion, etc. And this is kind of towards where I'm starting to think about what's next for me.
Uh-huh.
And my daughter was born, which was a huge impetus for why I ended up morphing into more of a day-to-day entrepreneur, real estate,
Yeah.
etc. And that led me eventually to Louis Vuitton.
So tell us now, at Louis Vuitton, you were a style advisor, correct? Tell us a little bit about what's a style advisor and what was your day-to-day like?
So with Louis Vuitton, the thing I loved about that experience was the real estate actually was a connection to that,
Mhm.
because I didn't approach real estate traditionally. I literally would do what I do every single day. I love wine. I love cocktails.
Mhm.
And I know that everyone wants to know what you do for a living. That's like a typical question.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I got my business. And so I started to document this on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And that's where Louis Vuitton came into the picture, because if you remember, that's when Virgil Abloh, rest in
Yeah.
peace, was just starting to ingratiate himself into the brand, and they wanted to really focus on men, with ready to wear, particularly accessories,
Yeah.
and as you know, making Louis Vuitton an entire lifestyle, not just one aspect, a belt or a fragrance. And so
Mhm.
I was there at a perfect time because that was a passion for me, and it started to become. Again, like I did with the NFL, it was a total experience when you dealt with me, where I'm not just handling you came in for a belt or you came in for a fragrance. I'm
Mhm.
helping you understand the entire brand and how to incorporate that brand into your lifestyle, personal lifestyle. And so
Yeah.
that's the difference to me of a style advisor versus a client advisor, where I'm not just handling your initial request or your initial interests. I'm exposing you to the entire brand and showing you how you can make Louis Vuitton an entire part of your lifestyle.
So who would you typically work with? Would you have clients approach you, or would you approach the VIC, the very important client?
It's a mixture, honestly. A mixture of people who are attracted to the brand on their own, which is there are many, as they should.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I would also pull in the relationships from over the years, because at this point I have, 20 plus years of experience of relationships and trust.
Hmm.
So it was a perfect storm of being able to handle, people that I don't know coming in,
Hmm.
but also helping people that I do know understand that not only do they understand what Louis Vuitton is, but I'm here now, and now the trust level is carrying into my job at Louis Vuitton. So it was a really, I would say, a 50-50, honestly, mixture of
Yeah.
people that I didn't know and people that I did know. But the one thing with me, and I'm really proud about that, is the people that I hadn't known prior to being at Louis Vuitton all of a sudden became part of the Sainte James family. And
Hmm.
that trust level was a very quick process. And so now they understood that, not only can they shop at Louis Vuitton, but now they have someone that they can trust who is going to look out for them in their entire lifestyle. So it was a really cool experience from that perspective for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you brought all those relationships to Louis Vuitton with you, and introduced those people to the brand. And so you were at, I believe, in a couple different locations with Louis Vuitton. You were at King of Prussia, and then I believe Chicago.
King of Prussia, New York is another
Okay.
big hub for Louis Vuitton, and I think that's also a great point that you made, because there's so much going on, as you know, in this whole region between DC, New York, Philadelphia. So you would really get all kinds of individuals from all walks of life who are coming to Philadelphia, for example, especially with the King of Prussia store.
Yeah.
They're in town for whatever the reason is, and all of a sudden, but they want to go to Louis Vuitton, they have to go to the King of Prussia location.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, like that was a real big hub for clienteling, because you had everyone from athletes, celebrities, entertainment people, business people as well, who are in Philadelphia for one reason or another, and they want to go to Louis Vuitton and have that experience. So you came across a lot of people that you probably, people probably might not expect.
But it wasn't typically where, somebody would come into the store and it was like a one-off encounter and you would help with styling for, one specific event.
Of course, there are times when you do have people that, you see them once and that's it. I always prefer to have ongoing relationships with clients who can reach out to me at any point in time and let me know what they're looking for, and vice versa. I can reach out to them and let them know about something that they might not be aware of. But the thing I loved, and still to this day love, about working with clients is a lot of those relationships and a lot of that trust level started with something as simple as me loving their shoes or loving the necklace that they have on. And actually, more importantly, being able to identify something that they have on that I would say, maybe some people might not even notice. And that has really always been kind of my secret of just being aware of, oh, that's a Van Cleef necklace you have on, or, that's a Hermes, whatever. So that's always been my thing, if you will, knowing like, oh, I know that's a new collab sneaker that just dropped. And so that's where it started for us. It would be something, one of my clients, I won't name him, but to this day, it literally started because he had a Syracuse shirt on, and he happened to be a big football fan. And there's a really large personality named Jim Brown who went to Syracuse. But the thing that we connected on was the fact that a lot of people don't realize not only was he a Hall of Famer football player, but he was an amazing lacrosse player. And so that conversation with this gentleman was really how our relationship started, because I knew what that was. I knew all about his sweatshirt. So
that's awesome. That's amazing. Well, a little story that is actually how you and I met. I walked into your store and I had my Alma PM on my wrist, and I'm just there looking at watches, and you're like, oh, I like your bag. And that was the start of this wonderful friendship. I was going to save this until later, but this is a great segue. Your advice for people wanting to get into luxury, entertainment, styling, it's really just building relationships, staying up on current events, knowing what's hot, what are the collabs, what's coming out, and, not just fashion.
That's the way you put it, is exactly how I would say anyone who is interested in luxury, fashion, etc. It's really, I would say, it also starts with making it part of your lifestyle. And that's always been something that I've tried to do, is really immersing yourself into, I use the word lifestyle all the time because it's literally not just one aspect for me. It's fashion, it's art, it's, music, it's everything. So I feel like all those things work together. And I think that if you can root yourself in that world, that it's always going to come out of you at the right times, because you don't know who you're going to meet and when.
Exactly.
Recently, I was in Princeton, and one of the best WNBA players, Rebecca Lobo, was just walking down the street, and not only was I knew who she was, but I actually worked with her husband, who worked for Sports Illustrated.
Oh, wow.
and she was there for a basketball camp. But I only use that example as like, it's those kinds of things and I have the seventh sense. I will admit that I don't know what it is where I can like see someone for the first time and realize like, no, that's the anchor on CBS in Seattle. Like, I don't know. I don't know how that happens, but it's always happened for me. But yeah, immersing yourself in the lifestyle initially is how I would always recommend people to get into the industry.
So you were at Louis Vuitton for a few years. Any advice for people, wanting to work with a style advisor, not just at Louis Vuitton, but any luxury brand?
I would say, go back to what I said before about start with something simple, like literally visiting your local boutique. Number one, get to know the people there, get to know the store, get to know, because there's always things, as you know, there's always things coming out, things changing. They're really amazing. Louis Vuitton to me is just an amazing brand for so many in so many ways, but the merchandising, the storytelling, history of the brand to me. And even though I'm not there, as you can still see, I'm still very passionate about Louis Vuitton. And I would say starting with visiting the boutiques, getting to know the people there, building a rapport with people and finding someone, because everyone has a different personality. So I always believe in matching energy. For me, my best clients to this day, we just, and I consider you not just a client, but a friend, but it's like the energy is the same. And we're vibing off of one another. So I think it's not being afraid to be like, you know what, I'm sure, this person is good at what they do and they're nice, which for some reason, I connect a little bit deeper and better with this person here, and just going with that, because that person is going to get to know you. They're going to get to know what you like, what you're looking for. And I like stretching the perspective of my clients is how I always put it, because they might come in looking for this, and I'll include that, but I'm also going to stretch them a little bit and be like, yeah, have you ever tried that? And so after a certain point, you do get a trust level, and they do begin to trust you, and a relationship is mutual. So I would say those are my advice for people initially.
So you did eventually leave Louis Vuitton, and is that where you went right into watches and jewelry, or did you make another stop along the way?
All along, I was always doing my own thing as well. I was also styling people behind the scenes. Watches was always a passion of mine anyway. I was very fortunate to have a lot of great relationships with Hamilton Jewelers, which is one of the preeminent jewelers in the entire country. The history.
And they have locations in Princeton, Palm Beach.
Yes, correct. Two in Palm Beach, one in Princeton. It's just an amazing company and organization and family, actually, because it's a fourth generation family. So one of my closest friends is the store director there. And through her, I was able to have a relationship with ownership. So that was always kind of a comfortable place for me anyway. And at the time was a perfect storm where there was a need for a brand ambassador. And so I got involved with social media, sales, marketing, events, etc. And obviously watches has always been a passion of mine as well. So it was a really easy transition for me because, again, it was relationship building. And so building that trust level. And I always joke at this point in time in my life, I feel like I have a following of people that have been with me.
From brand to brand.
I mean, at this point, they're friends, and I consider most of my clients and friends family anyway. So, but I just keep building on. But yeah, I'm in the luxury Swiss watch business now.
That's awesome. So I am familiar with Hamilton Jewelers. I have been a client there, especially around the time that my husband and I were getting married. We did spend quite a pretty penny at Hamilton Jewelers. But for anyone who's not familiar, you do sell your own in-house jewelry, I believe, but you do also sell other luxury brand jewelry in addition, right? So what brands do you offer?
So Hamilton is an authorized dealer, which for those of you who are listening who are into watches, the authorized dealers are the ones who have the official relationships with brands like Rolex, Patek Philippe, Cartier, and so on. And so they are one of the oldest standing authorized dealers in the country. I believe they were number one for Patek ever in the country, number two for Rolex. So they've been around literally since 1912. And so they also carry their own in-house jewelry collections as well. So they are an amazing organization and family to work for. And I actually have an opportunity to work on the vintage side as well. So I'm really happy about that because it's an entirely different world. The whole watch market itself is amazing and robust. And then the vintage side of it is just adds another layer to that. So I'm really fortunate to be able to bring my experience into that business as well.
Amazing. So so you and I have talked about this, but I am not into luxury watches because I already have one expensive habit, and that is handbags. So I am being willfully ignorant. I don't want to know a lot because I don't want to acquire a second expensive habit. So it's my understanding, and again, I'm not in this watch world, but it can, a lot of these watches can be really difficult to obtain, especially when you're looking at the Audemars Piguet, the Rolex. You need to have, like you said, a relationship. You can't just, walk into the store and buy a Royal Oak, for example.
Oh, you knew about that, huh? Royal Oak.
What?
You knew the Royal Oak. I like that.
That is that's all I have. That's all the knowledge I have. But you can't just, it's like walking into an Hermes and asking for a Birkin. Nobody's just gonna, even if you have all the money.
You're right. I mean, I think that having that relationship will allow them to know a lot more about you from this perspective, because especially with watches, there's a lot of people out there who are looking at getting a piece for the wrong reasons, maybe.
Okay.
And so some of the brands, I'm not going to say which ones, but, a lot of the brands want to make sure that they're getting into the right hands for the right reasons, because ultimately you're supposed to be enjoying the piece, whether it's a Birkin bag or a specific timepiece. It's not really meant to I'm going to take this item and try to make some money off of it or whatever it is. It's more about you're supposed to ultimately be enjoying the piece or the bag, as you know, with the bags or shoes, etc. So it's really about trying to just make sure the right people are getting these pieces for the right reasons. And that's where the relationship starts, because we can get to know who you are, what you're into, what you like, what you don't like, versus just someone randomly coming in and, who knows why they want this piece and if we'll ever see them again. So again, it goes back to the relationship part of it. And I think that works for both sides as well.
That's a really interesting point about the relationships. How do you handle that situation when you're building a relationship? What, have you ever worked with someone who you found out was just trying to get items to resell them, to make a profit? What do you look for with clients with that relationship, and how do you handle that?
I personally will say, and I actually remember a lot of things at Louis Vuitton where that was taking place with certain pieces of, I think it was sneakers at the time. But
Okay.
I think the thing for me that's always a telltale sign is when I can tell that the person is not really invested in the brand. That's one thing. But the other thing, and I always use this term, so forgive me, anyone who's heard me say this, but the intellectual curiosity is a big deal for me. Even if you don't have a specific item at this point, that's totally fine. I'm just more so looking at how curious are you about this particular item and why, versus did you, read something yesterday or watch something on television that you want to have the same, whatever it is that LeBron James has. Like, that's not the same thing as someone who is really interested in getting to know the brand and appreciate the brand for what it is. So, and I'll give you it's maybe not exact example, but I was and going back to Louis Vuitton, we had a lot of people coming in only wanting to get a Louis Vuitton belt.
Okay.
So they wanted to wear a belt and, have the Louis belt and walk around, and I got the Louis belt, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But to me, I was always very open and intentional about you're totally missing out on the entire brand. Like it's an entire history and story that goes along with this. So if you're traveling, you need accessories, right? Well, there's the keep
Yeah.
all. You know, you need sunglasses, you need to
Uh-huh.
smell good, get the fragrance. So I was really big on helping people understand how to embrace the entire brand from a totality standpoint. And I think even with the watches, anyone who has seen our social media, big shout out to H1912, my company.
Yes. I will link all of your socials. Everything will be linked in the description box below. So go follow.
We do a lot of social media posts, reels, etc. And one thing that I have started to do, which our owner really loves, is showing you how to match and pair watches with what you're wearing. So I do timepieces and fashion. And so helping people, gentlemen in particular, understand. I understand, and I know you're just getting into watches, but the case. So the case size is the size, you know, the dial of the watch. So the size of that, people get really caught up in whether it's a 36 millimeter or if it's a 41 millimeter, and I get that. However, I'm more of a vibe guy. So to me, if it feels good, if it looks good, then it is good. That's how I operate. So helping guys in particular, I'm only saying guys because I'm trying to really help the gentleman in particular understand how to, it's okay to be into fashion. And so, but yeah, so timepieces in fashion is my way of showing people how to make the watch part of your actual lifestyle. I'm going hiking today. What watch would I wear with that? I'm going to a black tie dinner. What watch would I wear with that? I'm just casually hanging out with the family. So it's like it's not just the watch at that point. It's more about something that is an accessory that's also part of your actual lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Do you have any advice for someone who has not purchased their first piece yet and is looking to buy their first watch or their first luxury bag or, you know, whatever luxury item it might be?
First, I would say try to visit your local boutique if you have one. Definitely do some research online. Just get familiar with what's happening in the industry. Get a sense of what you like, what you don't like, what your taste level is, what your preferences are, whether it's a bag, a shoes, watches, etc. And just get familiar with certain things. And then when you put that together with taking the time to visit the store, touch and feel, try things on, that's a big way to get yourself involved with that whole aspect, because a lot of people they've never put on a Swiss watch, and they might not know the difference between, you know, well, what's the difference between an Audemars Piguet and this other brand that I have on here. So, and I always say it's nothing wrong with not having any of those things. It's more about the appreciation level, which I will say this, you know, one thing, the best takeaway from Louis Vuitton that I had was understanding what luxury actually is. And I feel like you and I could have this conversation ad nauseum.
Yeah.
It was really taught to us that luxury is not just buying the most expensive bag or sweater, etc. It's really being able to appreciate quality. It doesn't mean that you have that item or maybe you can't afford it or whatever it is. And everyone, you know, has different restraints. But if you can at least appreciate the difference between this Swiss watch and this over here, that is actually what luxury is. And I think that when you can get your mind around that, all of a sudden you can have a conversation about luxury, lifestyle, fashion, etc. And it's not so intimidating for those people who are not currently, you know, consumers of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great advice. And, you know, I think it's a lot of people kind of forget that when it comes to luxury with buying these items, especially when we're on Instagram and just scrolling. I feel like in my feed, some days it's just unboxing after haul, you know, all these haul videos. And we're just faced with, and we don't even know, are people just buying these items and selling them, buying them and returning them? You know, a lot of it is, you know, online, and I say Instagram and YouTube just because those are the platforms I'm on the most, you know, but you know, I think sometimes we forget this, it's not just stuff that's to be bought, to be consumed, to have it, but it's to appreciate it. And, you know, I think of this as art. You know, I go to a museum, I love art, I love to look at art, I can appreciate it. I can't afford to buy multi-million-dollar paintings. You know, I can't afford to have this huge art collection, but it doesn't mean I'm any less appreciative of the art or knowledgeable of the art. You know, and I think there can definitely be some judgment online of people saying, oh, well, she like, you know, she has like no luxury bags, or she only owns canvas, or, you know, I say she, but, you know, it could be anyone. And there's a lot of judgment. And, you know, I think people forget it's not necessarily having to own every single thing to appreciate it and be an enthusiast of it, you know, and I think of it like art, and, you know, people forget sometimes, I think, with all these unboxings and hauls and just all this consumerism that we're exposed to.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a story real quick is that, so I consider myself an image consultant mainly because it's not just the fashion component. When I work with someone, I'm working with them on, you know, what wine to get, if they're into cigars, etc. But one thing, you know, with my background in sports is, and I've had a lot of success currently and look forward to having more, hopefully, is helping particularly athletes or entertainers who can afford any of these things, right? And so understanding how to not just put on, I call it patches, and you know, that you know, whatever hat, I don't want to name any brands, but you put on this hat, you put on this shirt, and it's top to bottom, and it, you know, it's fine. But I like to help them understand how to add texture and depth to their look. And so it becomes a lot more interesting when you realize, like, well, I'm wearing this shirt because of this, I'm wearing this hat because of that, and I'm actually able and confident enough to put all these things together, because that's actually what, to me, style is. It's some of the times style is from a place of not having, because it's like sometimes you can't get all of those things, but if you can put your look together, it looks as if now all of a sudden it's a cohesive look. So that's a big component to, especially now when I'm working with athletes or entertainers, it's understanding how to add depth and texture. And that's where I love about vintage is being able to mix and match, you know, high end, low end, vintage, brand new, streetwear, high luxury. And that's a big part of my personal aesthetic, but just helping people understand, even in the watch industry, because it's a totally different mentality when people are looking to get a brand new, you know, Rolex versus getting their mind around, oh, wait, this is from 1975. And it's like, it's a totally different shift in how you think. And I love that challenge of helping people understand that, like, that doesn't make it any less. It actually probably makes it a little bit more interesting in some component. So you're right. You're totally right. It's not just about labels. It's all about, you know, adding whatever makes sense for your aesthetic and your personality, and also whatever you're trying to express to the world.
Yeah. All right. I need you to help me work on my my texture and depth, because since working from home and not going out and having 2 kids, I am a t-shirt and yoga pants 5 days a week kind of girl. So
It's all good. But that's another, you know, I actually think that that's a whole lane. My wife works from home, and we talk about this all the time, but like, I think that that's in and of itself exactly my point of, like, you know, the comfort thing of, like, how to elevate comfort. And so, you know, it could just be adding this bracelet or adding this pair of shoes or whatever. So there's always unique ways to do that.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love that. This is a really interesting conversation, and I would love to have you back whenever you are available.
Anytime.
So again, Sainte James, I will link all of his socials, contact, everything in the description box below. And if you have any questions definitely drop those comments. We will look over any questions and answer them. And I think if we get enough questions, we can have a part 2.
Absolutely.
And we can talk about any topic anyone's interested in: watches, fashion, sports.
Absolutely. I gotta have you on. I gotta have you on my platform as well.
Yes. So definitely. So Sainte James just started his own YouTube channel as well. That is growing. And I'm just so thrilled for you. I'm so excited to see all the new things. You always have something going. There's always a new adventure, something new to explore, to achieve, to do. It never ends. So I'm really excited to see what the future will hold.
Thank you. Likewise.